Good morning, everybody. It's Pastor John with another edition of Monday Morning Quarterback. So yesterday was a very special day in the life of the church. It was Pentecost. That's the day that we celebrate essentially the birth of the church. It commemorates the day in the New Testament in the book of Acts where the disciples, this is post-resurrection, and Jesus has ascended into heaven. So the disciples are, gathered together by themselves, sort of wondering what to do next. And the Holy Spirit descends upon them. And it changes things a little bit. People start speaking in tongues and everybody else is understanding them. And people who are observing, are accusing the disciples of being drunk. And Peter says, we're not drunk. It's only 9 o'clock in the morning. What are you talking about? But it's a big deal because the coming of the Spirit is, like I said, it's really considered to be the birth of the church. And what's important about all of this, what we must recognize in the church, if Pentecost is to ever mean anything at all, is that when the Spirit came, things changed. Okay? Things changed. Divisions that we had built up started to fall, started to crumble. And people were speaking languages and others were understanding and all these things. But things changed. It wasn't the status quo anymore. And Pentecost is a reminder, it's an annual reminder to the church that until that great and glorious day, when we are all feasting together at Christ's heavenly banquet, until that day, the Holy Spirit is all about change. It is never about the status quo. So if the church finds itself trying to defend a status quo, it must really ask itself, what is it afraid of? What newness are we resisting? Now, the important thing to understand is all change is not necessarily or inherently good. If our nation becomes more racist or more homophobic or more militant, well, those are changes, but they're not good changes, and they're certainly not changes that reflect the values of God's kingdom. So change for change's sake is not what I'm talking about. Change for the sake of recreation, change for the sake of newness, change for the sake of, as we Methodists like to say, going on to perfection. Those things are always good. And the more we resist them, the more difficult it's going to be when the change does take effect. And it always will. I had a friend that used to say, that which you resist persists. and that's really what God's change does. Okay? When the Holy Spirit is working, and that's always, the Holy Spirit is never not working in the lives of people. We may not be aware, we may not believe it's happening, but it's happening. And it's carving out newness all the time. And it's going to persist until we relent and accept the change, accept the transformation, accept the newness, accept all of that it offers. So change is the Holy Spirit's modus operandi. That's what it means to be at work as a Holy Spirit, is to be enduring change. Yes, the Holy Spirit grants us comfort, grants us peace, grants us grace. In fact, the Holy Spirit does grant us comfort, and it wants us to feel at home in God's presence. But not so that we might just be at home and comfortable and, untouched by the events of the world. It wants us to be comfortable in God's presence so that we might have the strength, the courage, the wisdom, and all those things to move forward into change for God. So when you think of the Holy Spirit, when you think of Pentecost and the Spirit coming down, remember that the Holy Spirit is God's agent of change. And to the extent we resist God's change, we are resisting the Holy Spirit, and we are resisting God's mission on earth. So let us, as a church, finally embrace change. Change that leads us closer to the heart of God. Have a wonderful week, my friends. God bless.